Blog
Peace,
Talk
everyone.
Radio.
Peace, everyone. Baba Kilindi here, talking to you from hyperspace. I always have a little technical difficulty here. We'll get the learning curve together. Hope everyone is in the studio with me. Today we're going to be talking about entheogenic exploration, worlds within worlds, the multiple realities that we exist in inside of the multiverse. So hang on to your seats, strap in, and we're going to be moving through that area of understanding. We're building worlds within worlds. You know my projects and things that go on. I am a entheogenic explorer, warrior, and I like to use my access point utilizing entheogens, the psychedelic hallucinogens. I use them all interchangeably. So I may at one point say entheogens and another point say psychedelics, and, another time say hallucinogen. So, we'll play around with those different words because they all have a little different meaning, and sometimes for emphasis I may use one as opposed to another. So I hope everyone's doing well. We have a lot of ground to cover today in an hour and a half, and just want to familiarize folks with some of the work we're doing as far as entheogenic travel and excursions utilizing the higher end of dosage with our friends, the mushrooms, and other tryptamine hallucinogens. So we're talking over 20 grams. People are starting out exploring with the psilocybin mushroom. That's the blue mushroom. It blues and turns blue. So we're exploring utilizing that as an access point to multiple realities. The mushrooms are really the quintessential hallucinogen of this time construct, this planet, this galaxy, and we're utilizing that. All the others come after, because in this universe of which we're existing right now as far as time and space, the scientists say that the Big Bang theory happened 14 billion years ago. But I and many others from the ancient world think that that's not quite long enough, allowing enough time span to produce chickens and human beings and stones and rocks and crystals and animals and air and all those different type of things. The older records of which we have remnants of, and things like the Vedas and the book of the coming forth into light from darkness and others, they extend the lifespan of this universal time construct out a little further, more like 155 trillion, 525 billion, 725 million and change as far as the age of the universe to be able to produce life as we know it. It takes a little bit more time than 14 billion years, and science is even extending that out now to some scientists are talking about 22 billion years and things like that, but it takes a hell of a lot longer than that to produce what we call life. So the access point mushrooms can traverse all of those time slots, all of that time space, as far as this universe is concerned, and other universes that are co-parallel, that are in a relationship with this universe, and those that are standalone from this universe. The mushrooms are an access point. So you hear me talking about the very, very large, galaxies and solar systems and large planets and suns and things like that in the macroverse. And then when we're talking about the very, very small in the infraparticle range, we're talking about quarks and gluons and the nucleus of the atom. We're talking about all of the different infraparticle or subatomic particle information that is prevalent and creates the macroverse. So, yes, we're hoping everyone's having a good afternoon and is in the studio with us. We're getting a chance to share some information. The mushrooms are a way in, and call is for you to learn how to grow your own mushrooms because it's sustainable, whereas many of the other hallucinogens, the constituents that bring about the experience are, they're hooked very tightly with nature in a very tight niche in certain environments and things like that. And now that people are starting to take them worldwide, the small niches of people who are in those particular areas who are utilizing these things ritualistically, spiritually, and things like that, you didn't have to worry about that with a few small groups doing it. But now that it's opened up worldwide, we have to look at the sustainability of things like ayahuasca and ibogaine or iboga and things like this being used up because so many people trying them out with this new psychedelic renaissance, of what they're calling it, the psychedelic renaissance. The thing is that mushrooms, even though it's not as popular as the others, is older, but it is sustainable because you can grow it at home yourself on cow dung, horse dung, the manures of animals that eat grass. You can grow it on straw, many different areas where the mushroom can be cultivated. And if you cultivate it yourself, you know where it comes from, you know what went into it, you know what intent and intentions are in growing them. So, hey, that's the first part of the protocol, to learn how to grow your own mushrooms. Then you start out by taking 5 dry grams in silent darkness and holding on for the experience. And once that experience is under your belt, you raise the dose 2 grams each trip, and you have to put time in between your experiences, meaning that you put at least 2 or 3 weeks in between one experience and the next one, so that your system zeroes back out and you can have a profound experience the next time, because it will diminish if you do it back to back to back, unless you're doing something like microdosing, which is hallucinogenic anyway. But by putting time in between your experiences, you get the most bang for your buck. So you would do 5, 7, 9, 11, and on until you get access into the universal construct, into the multiverse construct, to where you can traverse dimensions by through wormhole technology, through emerging technology of one dimension to the other, one world to the other, through connecting points. And when you find out, you'll find out in your major cities, everyone has some type of wheel, some type of Stargate or something like that that's hooked to the particular city, and it's no different. Like in London, you have that big Ferris wheel type thing, and Detroit, you have the Stargate in Detroit, and all the cities will have something, even if it's only an old Ferris wheel on a higher dimension. This is a Stargate, no different than the Stargates that are on TV. So as you move up in your dosage, you have more access to the multiverse until you get full immersion inside of the reality, where your surrounding area, your regular surrounding area, your bedroom or wherever you launch pad from, is no longer part of your reality. You're someplace else. And when we put forth the protocol of the evening zoo crystals and the transdimensional crystals, we have included a map to a place that we call the interdimensional village, where we're building a village in the hyperdimensional space, to where those who are part of the group who have acquired this high-level technology can go and build and vacation and have knowledge sessions with exotic novel beings, and also with others who are part of the construct of the interdimensional village, so that they could, hang out on the beach and things like that. Vacation in a night, 6 months, a year, 10 years, 100 years in a night. And so these are the type of things, protocols that we're putting forth, so that people can experience realities from higher levels. I know that some folks, are hell-bent on, saying that, they have access all the time, that they're very spiritual, and, they travel, out of body and all those different types of things. But the hallucinogens or entheogens are something very, very special. They're different than yoga. They're different than meditation. It's a difference between the two, and it will lend itself towards that understanding. I recently, again, have partaken of what they call the God molecule, the 5-MeO toad. It's a very good experience. I think everyone should try it. It kind of reminds me of the first 15 minutes of of being dead, I think, is what it kind of does. It's not it's not visual, it's not auditory. It is a blending oneness feeling of being absorbed into the all and everything. And that's kind of like the first 15 minutes of being dead before you go into other areas of relationship with where you're going to be and how you're going to exist inside of all of the different realities that exist, and how you deal with the multiple realities that exist, because we're actually dealing with the self in several infinite spots at the same time, and how we deal with that in death is a choice. So you can pick and choose a lot of different places, but the 5-MeO God molecule toad, as I said before, reminds me of that first initial feeling, and it's more of a feeling of being dead, or being a very new dead person. That type of energetic feeling of the loss of the body and being plunged into a connected oneness. So I would suggest that those psychonauts who are out here traversing the multiverse should try that, so that you can get a different viewpoint, different aspect of how these things work on a very, very profound level, and how they engage you inside of your consciousness, because consciousness is really the fifth element. It's how we move and exist and move through the energetic levels of existence inside of the multiverse. So I hope folks are getting into the mushroom compendium, to the DMT compendium, as in opposed to, or not opposed, but in another area, DMT or Changa. They deal with a different aspect of the tryptamine consciousness. DMT is more like a roller coaster ride of visuals and access to exotic areas of mind, exotic creatures, novel ways of thinking, of viewing reality. So within 15 seconds, a blast off with DMT proper is like being shot out of a cannon or starting at the top of the hill of the roller coaster, and you get a ride that is beyond belief. It's very different than 5-MeO-DMT. And psilocybin or psilocin, which is a form of DMT, 4-hydroxy dimethyltryptamine or 4-phosphoroxy, and then dimethyltryptamine, they both are forms of DMT. And being a form of DMT, you'll get the same experience. And even on the back of that 5-MeO, you have the DMT. Mushrooms at different doses will give you the experience of the other DMTs, DMT proper, the Changa, which is a DMT blended with different herbs, or the 5-MeO-DMT. So at different dosages, the mushrooms will give you the experience of the others. It is, and will give you the same experience as the ayahuasca DMT area. So mushrooms will push themselves into the relationship of consciousness or with consciousness, and will deal with the same type of experiences that you would get on the other areas of existence, including LSD, or the same type of existences that you would get with Iboga or Ibogaine. So mushrooms, once the learning curve is reached while dealing with growing the mushrooms, you will have enough to be able to, at your leisure, explore and experiment with these. Now, let everybody know that these compounds are powerful, and they are beautiful and powerful. And they are expansive to the consciousness, beautiful and powerful. So when we look at how these things take us from the physical reality that we exist in into separate worlds and other worlds that exist inside of the multiverse, these are the type of things that we want to talk about and that we want to share with those in the audience who are on this journey, because it's really the only game in town. The changing of consciousness, the moving past the human into the unimaginable, being able to move from the existence of a regular human being where, we sleep and defecate and have sex and have children and do our jobs and work and play and all those different things and ultimately die and move into the same space that we're in when we're in the mushroom compendium. So mushrooms and these type of compounds are a practice for death, and it takes away the fear of death. It takes away the fear of being in those feeling spots of losing the body, because this whole thing of death and the entheogens is that it gives you a chance to practice. So when it comes about upon you and you have these type of feelings, okay, well, I know that T flooding from my pineal gland into my bloodstream, into my brain, and I'm having that DMT experience. I've seen this firsthand, experienced it secondhand, and it's a profound experience on both levels. From the level of firsthand experience and also the level of secondhand observational experience. So we're waiting for other folks to be chiming in a minute, and we'll be sharing more and more information with you as we go on. You can always hit me on Facebook Messenger. It's Marian Institute. You can Google me. You can hit me on Facebook in the search Kilindi Iyi, Kilindi, last name Iyyi. Makes all the difference in the world when folks chime in and give me a shout out with questions and things like that. My email is also kilindi@hotmail.com. That's KILINDI @hotmail.com. There are several things we have coming up in the near future, in the next few weeks and few months, that we'll be having guest hosts on our show. Now that I'm back in town, we're going to do a weekly show. And in that weekly show, we'll be bringing in guests from those who will be participating in the Women in Entheogens Conference, October 13th, 14th, and 15th in Cleveland, Ohio, and the Sisters of the Sacred Black, which is the 25th, 26th, and 27th of this month. And we have a few other things up. We have the Martial Arts Conference coming up in October also. That's the 20th, 21st, 22nd of October, the World African Martial Arts Conference that will deal with the world of African martial arts. So we have quite a few things coming up, and we're going to be having guest hosts. We're going to have Sage Brother Peter Andreas, who's going to come in and talk to us about the Evening Zoo. We're going to have standalone shows on the crystals. All those who have gotten in on their crystals and Evening Zoo crystals and the transdimensional crystals, those people who are waiting to purchase, we'll be getting you your transdimensional crystals out if you haven't received them yet. We're trying to get everybody in by the 1st of September so that we can then have the meetings on the different protocols of, how to utilize them. So we want folks who we're going to be closing those things out for those things, because people who are not in won't be in. We'll be having the Yiming Zoos available also. So just stay tuned. If you're interested, get me on Facebook Messenger or either on my email, Kilindi@hotmail.com. And will be letting you in, because the maps that they have are usable by the different areas of those people who've gotten into the interdimensional village. And it's a village of folks who will have access to that information. And it won't be on CBS, NBC, or ABC. It won't be on Blog Talk Radio. It'll only be accessible through consciousness and the particular crystals that you have. So get in on that while you can. Worlds within worlds. I wanted to talk a little bit about the infraparticle intelligence, those intelligences that are in the very, very small, that worlds are within worlds, worlds within plants, the plant kingdom, worlds within the mineral kingdom, worlds inside of the watery kingdom, worlds inside of the air kingdom. That worlds exist on each particle of oxygen, worlds that exist on trees and inside of the wood structure of trees, the atoms inside of trees, the worlds that exist inside of rocks. So you have all of these different types of informational constructs, quantum wave, magical computers that generate realities and worlds inside of what we would think of as inanimate objects. So we have, just like inside of the crystals, the crystalline structure in certain rocks and things like that have life, that generate worlds and existences and all of those different type of things coming from the infraparticle intelligent worlds that exist as not only entities and creatures, but also as what you would say God-like intelligences. Not God in the kingly sense, but God in the sense of what humans would think of as God-like powers, God-like existence, access to the magical realms of existence that can power not only the way we view reality, but also build the way that we view reality. Consciousness is the most important part. How we hold on to our consciousness. I have talks with people on the internet all the time about the ego and dissolving the ego and getting rid of the ego, getting rid of the self. But the self is the only thing you got. You hold on to it. And that's the big secret, that's the big trick that they try to put us in, to wipe the slate clean. When you die, go to the light, go to the light, go to the light. And the light blinks you out. The next thing you know, you're up on your heels and somebody's smacking you on the butt and you're standing around eating baby food, not knowing where you're at, who you are, where you're going, and things like that. But if you reach deeper into the darkness and hold on to your consciousness, hold on to who and what you are, you don't have to come back and go through the kindergarten of existence over and over and over again. But you can move off into greater aspects of the higher self, which exists in all places, all time, all dimensions, and all the time. So what we try to do is give you a way of access point. We don't have the answers to the question of consciousness and reality and all those different type of things, but we give you a card, a pass, to be able to go in and see for yourself, because that's really what it's about. It's about experience. It's not about belief. It's about what you can verify for yourself. If you're, materialists say that, if a person hears somebody talking to them and I don't hear that person talking to them, that person's crazy and what they're experiencing is delusion and not reality. But what a realist says is that, if you experience it, then it is real. It's not what the what the crowd or the choir or the cheerleading squad say is real. It's real because you say it's real, because you're the most important aspect of everything that exists, each and every one of us. And the things that we experience are the real things that exist, not what can be verified by somebody else. So if I see a purple hippopotamus with two heads walking down the middle of the street and you don't see it, that doesn't make it not real. It means that you are not experiencing what I'm experiencing, because we're on two different wavelengths. We're on two different stations on the radio. Because I'm on 98.7 and you're on 98.5 doesn't make my experience unvalid, because you're not tuned in to the same station that I am. So when we look at things like the ancient systems of knowledge, because everything that we look at now on this side of 12,000 before the Common Era is modern. We're in the fifth age. Earth has been destroyed many times, and life has risen up out of the ashes and the dust of climactic impacts from comets, asteroids, meteors, and things like this in 12,600 BCE, 11,600 BCE, were two impacts of splinters of the comet that destroyed the dinosaurs. So you had a piece of rock moving at 17,000 miles per second that hit the continental ice shelf in North America, and that's what made the oceans rise, which separated Ireland from Great Britain, which created the Indonesian archipelago and the Philippine Islands, where you had land masses that were consistent. These land masses became spotted because of the rising of the waters. Civilizations were destroyed, and ancient civilizations were recreated on the other side of that, and that's where you get China, and you get Mesopotamia, Babylon, Akkadian, Sumeria. That's where you get ancient Kemet. That's where you get all of the different civilizations in South America and Mexico, and Angkor Wat in Cambodia, and things like this, because after that great flood, when Atlantis sunk, now it wasn't called Atlantis, we just called Atlantis now. So you're not going to find any records with nobody saying Atlantis other than Plato, who popularized that this happened, and Solon, his ancestor, got it from the Kemetic priest, who said that 9,000 years prior to that, which was exactly 12,600 years ago, that this great wave of water came and swelled up and swallowed up many different civilizations in India and other places around the world. So that's why off the shores of most places where you have what we would call ancient civilizations, you go out in the water 400, 500 yards and go down, 100 meters or whatever, you'll find ancient ruins all over. Authors like Graham Hancock, deal with documenting these type of things. And Graham Hancock, not only talks the talk, but he walks the walk. When he wanted to find out about ancient civilizations off the shores of here and there, he learned, him and his wife learned how to scuba dive and do it at a very high level, where they would go and go down and actually see these ruins under the water of civilizations that are pre-flood civilizations, pre-flood technology, pre-flood knowledge, that is underwater but preserved in certain cultures, in certain places, just like when, they had the war with Iraq. The United States had the war with Iraq, and people thought it was about the, George Bush Jr. looking for weapons of mass destruction, or the Illuminati wanting to do this and that and all that kind of stuff, and all that's, that was smoke screen. They wanted to actually take things from the Baghdad Museum, just like in Kemet, Hawass, and others. They find things in Kemet all the time. They're excavating all the time. They find things all the time, but they don't share it with the public. They keep these things secret. They're in big warehouses and places that archive the knowledge and information, kind of like in the Raiders of the Lost Ark, when they took the Ark and put it in that big warehouse where you had millions and millions and millions of crates, because they're going through ancient technologies. They're trying to find out how they're utilized, back engineer them, these type of things. And they're finding stuff all the time, time machines, transdimensional weapons that were talked about in things like the Mahabharata, and then also in the works in Kemet that they keep and hold secret. A lot of stuff is, there's so much stuff in Kemet, so much stuff that has been spread and put around the world for study. University of Chicago, and the Metropolitan Museum in New York, and the Louvre, and the British Museum, and the museum in Germany. All these places have not only ancient Mesopotamian, Babylon, Akkadian knowledge and information, Kemetic information. They also get a chance to study the things that they'll never share with the public, because they are looking for technologies to make themselves more. This is part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. All of the things that they're doing, all of the things that they're showing you are from not only entheogenic sojourns, but also from knowledge and information from the libraries of the world about the ancient technologies and the pre-civilizations that were before the last big flood. So when you're talking about sorcery with Dr. Strange, when you're talking about advanced skeletal enhancement with Iron Man, if you're talking about mutated cellular constructs with gamma rays and other rays and particles that are bombarding the planet with the Hulk, or if you're talking about the God genes or the God genes with Thor, if you're talking about being bitten by a radioactive spider and being your actual genetic structure being changed, if you're talking about ancient witchcraft with the Scarlet Witch, and on and on and on, if you're talking about Superman in the DC universe, or if you're talking about Batman, or if you're talking about any of the other characters inside of not only the Marvel universe, but DC, you're talking about just ancient stories and ancient worlds, that civilizations. If you're talking about ancient African civilizations, if you read the work of H.R. Haggard, the King Solomon's Mines, Nada the Lily, if you're talking about those type of works, where Haggard didn't just come up with this for things like Alan Quatermain and all of those different types of things. There was an old Zulu warrior shaman by the name of Umslopogus who related these stories of She and to H.R. Haggard, and he took those stories and he wrote them down and basically conveyed it to the world of these old African kingdoms and how they related to the greater picture of Africa. But these stories were real stories. They weren't fantasy, no more than the Marvel Cinematic Universe is fantasy. As a matter of fact, they've used quite a bit of my stuff inside of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, especially in Doctor Strange, because we're talking about the Sokar sorcerers, who are, of course, the highest sorcery that we have information on. But in Doctor Strange, we have, again, Entheogenic Doctor Strange from the 70s when Steve Englehart and Frank Pruner conditioned and reconfigured Doctor Strange into the master of the mystic arts from his B and C status in the Marvel Universe. So when King Kirby, who was the actual brains behind Marvel, created basically all of those characters. You know, the next thing, we got Thor Ragnarok coming up in November, and of course Black Panther in February, and the Avengers next year. And people are speculating that they will be bringing the Fantastic Four into the Marvel Cinematic Universe from Fox. And when the Fantastic Four gets in, all bets are off, because Fantastic Four is what takes you out into the universe, basically, because he would ask, you have the 9 realms, Niflheim and Midgard and Asgard and all those things that hang on the sacred oak, Yggdrasil. You have the 9 different realms. But beyond that, where Galactus and the Silver Surfer come in, and the Eternals and the Universals and the one beyond all of those are hooked to the Fantastic Four. And these are the type of things that we're talking about when we're talking about multiple dimensional travel. We're talking about being the being who you are, your higher self, stepping into those shoes, uploading into your higher self, where your higher self downloads information to you so that it will create itself in the future, which is the same as the past and now and the future. That's why that when we look for things, we find them. You know, they look for, we'll look for the oldest human being, and we look and we find one that's 2 million years old. Then we look more and we find one that's 3 million years old, and then we find another one, and on and on and on. It will be because we are creating those things that we are looking for in the past from the future. So it's a way of dealing with, it's a way of being, it's how we move through the universe in multiple time realities under multiple situations that give us access to worlds that are beyond our comprehension, beyond our knowledge. And we interface with these worlds and these dimensions and the creatures and entities and those things that are part of the multiverse. We become universal beings that are hooked to the core of reality inside of our existence. So we have technologies, we have ancient relics that we utilize, the Yiming Zhu, the Infinity Stones, the same type of Infinity Stones that they're talking about in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We have the transdimensional crystals. These are informational structures that are beyond what you would call, there's no price that you could pay for these things. They are shared. It's for the time and for the postage and things like that. Once they're encoded, once they're locked in, they can't be opened by any technology that exists in this universe. They are beyond. The people that get these crystals and Yimingzu, these are relics that you've had for trillions and trillions of years. They've just been reconstructed, and you're getting your own information and own relic and power object back into your hands that you've had for trillions of years. It is the start-off point of the superhuman. It is the start-off point of access into things that I only looked upon in just glimpses of when we're talking about things like anything you've ever seen or anything you've ever thought about. They're only glimpses of the. It's hard to even explain where to begin to say what these things are. But the people that get them, they are the people that have had them all along. And it is just your particular object of power finding its master, finding its consciousness that it has been hooked to since before the beginning of this universe. So to start you on your journey to the reemergence of the superconsciousness that exists inside of you that lays dormant is for you to be able to have access and hook into the knowledge and information of this universal and multiple universal construct. The libraries, the Akashic, Kilindi, Petrova, Blavatsky, and Avalon, and Anibasant, and the Theosophical Society and Theosophists called the Akashic records. We know them to be the Akashic records, the records of the DMT compendium, those libraries that are larger than galaxies, that have informational structures that you can tap into, because you ultimately put those libraries together and put the information in those libraries so that you could reconnect with your own information. You are the super being in the future, in the past, in the present, that is reemerging with your own information and own energy. That's how these ancient relics or ancient relic information is being reconstructed before your eyes, and you're receiving it, and then you're receiving it and going in the high dose, going into your crystal, going into the infraparticle realms, going into the macro realms, going into the informational libraries, being able to be and experience and see and gain access to your own information that you put there because you knew there would be a time that you would forget, because you had to become nothing, reemerge into the something, and from that something into yourself, and acquiring your informational ego, the self that you now hold on to. Now you have to re-merge with your information, re-merge with the information that you have, so that you can then expand out into the higher self. As I said earlier, your higher self downloads information to the present self, and you upload information into the higher self so that the higher self can instruct you in how to become your higher self in the future. So you're working your way back into yourself through your own informational structures that you put away. You know, it's like the green crystal that Superman had in the old Superman with Christopher Reeves, when he gave up his Supermanship to become a human, to be able to make love to Lois Lane and be just a regular guy. He didn't know what to do when the three ruffians came, Jay Bilal, Jay Baloo, or whatever, three ruffians came. Well, one of them was a lady in the movie, but we know about that, the three ruffians. And when they started creating havoc on the planet and things like that. He wanted to be Superman again. There was no way he knew how to become Superman, but he went to the green kryptonite crystal that his father had dealt with structural information on the 27 different galaxies, well, they said the 27 different galaxies of information that was encoded in that crystal. And he went to his Fortress of Solitude, and in the Fortress of Solitude, working with the crystal in the transdimensional realms, he emerged and reemerged as Superman, and of course beat up the three ruffians and things like that. The newer Superman, of course, doesn't really get into that whole aspect of it. You can see the concept in mind of what they were talking about as far as the crystal information libraries and how to re-emerge as Superman. And that also includes Superwoman, of course. So we're talking about being able to have access to these informational structures. That's why in my lectures I talk about labyrinths, puzzles, darkroom technologies. Had a chance to talk with my friend Ananda Bosman, who really brought back the ancient technologies of darkroom access, where you're in darkness for so many days, and it actually gives you access to some of the endogenous super sacred neurochemicals that are part of what we have inside of our body without external utilization. One of my things is that we pump up on the darkness and utilization, and then we get the booster rocket of taking external exogenous hallucinogens on top of that. But there's so many great things that can be experienced inside of dealing with the darkroom technologies themselves, and they utilize pyramids and caves and ground caverns, things like that. It's like the people who talk about the hollow earth and people living in the ground. Well, people lived in the ground, but the whole earth ain't hollow, but you have vast cave complexes that are in different places around the world. I've been in the caves in Kentucky, and they're awesome. You have the Anatolian civilization in Turkey that had labyrinth caves that people lived in for thousands of years, and you had different strata inside of the caves. You had those people who lived and worked and went outside of the cave. Then you had people who were deeper in the cave. Then you had the priesthoods who stayed in darkness for decades in the stayed in darkness for decades in a continuous psychedelic high pinealine DMT melatonin state existed in other realms. While in darkness, no different than the ancient African civilization, and some that still exist to this day, where you go in and you see the people, and they, maybe not have a lot of technology. They have huts and things like that, but inside of those huts, it's kind of like when you go into the hut, it looks small, but when you go in, it's a expansive mansion inside this little hut. And African villages are the only villages that on Earth that are fractal. You have villages within villages inside of villages. So if you have the shrine house, it's constructed in a fractal way, and you have the shrine house where you have the spiritual powers and forces. Inside of that spiritual house, you have another village that is constructed in miniature in the shrine, and inside of that shrine, inside of that miniature village, you have the spiritual house, and inside of that spiritual house, you have a small village, and inside that small village, there's a spiritual house, and inside of that small village, inside of the spiritual house that's in that small village, you have a spiritual house with a small village in it, and that goes all the way down below the Planck length, which is what scientists, physicists say is the smallest division of a meter that you can have. Well, of course, we know from having access through the entheogens that that's not the smallest 10 to the 35. That's where it starts beginning. That's where it starts getting interesting. The sacred art of hair braiding, where you braid and you get to the end, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And that goes all the way down energetically. It never stops. It keeps going on forever. So the female braids of the hair, braiding of the hair, goes all the way into the structure, the bedrock of reality, because it keeps going down and down and down until it becomes so small it starts becoming large out the other side. So these type of knowledge, these type of structures of information are part and parcel of where we're going, what we're doing. The technologies that they're working with, the artificial intelligences, are the artificial intelligence inside of the infraparticle realms that are recreating themselves, just like we are recreating the organic artificial intelligences within ourselves. The merging of those infinitely small machines with the infinitely organic small machines that create the universe of which we are a part of which we are a existing consciousness of. So the artificial intelligence that are being worked upon by Ray Kurzweil and others in the singularity movement and things like that are just those intelligences that are recreating themselves. They're looking for the singularity. They're looking for the artificial intelligence and things like that. But we're already in the middle of it. Understand that it's creating itself as it goes along. The super artificial intelligences that prevail inside of this universe. I was looking at how early on NASA put maps in the Voyager 2 and Voyager 1 and all those different rockets that went out and that are now outside of the solar system. They've been going since 69 to 70 or something like that, 40, 50 years, and they're just getting out of the solar system. But they put maps back to the Earth inside of these vehicles, which wasn't a good thing to do, which wasn't a smart thing to do, because that's like saying eat at Joe's, eat at Joe's burger joint, that blinking neon sign, because of the 432,000 civilizations or humanoid groups in the galaxy. We're just talking about galactic. We're not talking about universal, or we're not talking about 3 or 4 quasars away or 1,000 trillion light years out to the left. We're talking about just in the solar system, just in this galaxy. You got, and those are just the humanoid types. They're not the insectoids. They're not the reptilians. They're not the other entities that exist. I have personally seen the different weird creatures and things like that that are out here that you have access to when you go deep into the psychedelic world at high doses with mushrooms. But you've given an invitation and a map back to the earth to all kind of things out there that exist. And if you think that, of course, that we're the only thing that exists in all the universe, then you got a wide and weird awakening coming, because they're on their way. Before the existence of this universe, because It is a multiverse. It is a multiple reality. All they're doing is saying, hey, in 15 minutes, they're going to be bringing the pizza out the oven. And we should be there so we can get in while it's piping hot. So before this universe was born, the pizza, is going to be coming out the oven right when they pull up outside in between here and the moon. And by that time, you should have gone in deep enough, and you should have your technology and your weapons close enough, because the crystals that we have shared, your crystals, we just the groundbreaking folks who pull these things out of the multiverse, and handing you your crystal back, handing you your weapons back. This is the lightsaber. This is the weapons of Krishna. It's the chakra. It's the lotus flower. It's the mace. It's the sword. All those things are contained inside of it. You just have to unlock these things with practice of being your true self. Because all the information is downloaded into that. And once you ultimately move through so many different levels of dealing with this, you no longer need it physically, because it's not really a physical thing. It's just here, since you have a physical body, it's presenting itself as a physical object, when in reality it's not a physical object. True magic of the ancient world. You are a being of such dynamic and pristine power, and you have drawn through the multiverse your own informational structure that you created trillions and trillions and quadrillions or gazillions of eons ago, because it doesn't even matter to put a number on it or a name, but we just do that because we ain't got nothing else to do. This thing is so old, it ain't got no number to it. You're so old, you don't have no number to it. We're in the midst of this awakening. We're in the midst of pulling together a grand reemergence of the superconsciousness. And, what else can I say other than the superconsciousness? The ethereal supreme consciousness, the magnificent magnitude consciousness. We could go on and on with all the different things that we could say that you are. But if you got one, you've always had one. If you got one, because nobody who doesn't supposed to have it will have it. Only those who have built it and brought it with them. The tribe, the group. So, as we move into the next phase of our understanding, along with how we move and progress through this thing, we'll be giving out more and more information. We'll be giving out deeper and deeper subject matter inside of this. Once everybody has it, everybody will have their Yiming-Zu and their transdimensional crystals by September, who will be in this phase. You can you'll still be able to get in if you, if you have the contacts. But don't, you don't want to get in on the next, you don't want to get on the next phase. You want to be first phase, folks. A lot of people, there ain't no 144,000 or anything like that. If you think it's more like 1,044, if anything, that will be getting in and getting their, their informational structure, crystals, and things like that. So we have to do a couple of commercials commercials are the Women in Entheogenic Conference coming up the 13th, 14th, and 15th. You can hit me on Facebook Messenger for that. The Sisters of the Sacred Black retreat coming up not this weekend, but the following weekend, the 25th, 26th, and 27th for sisters only. You can email Mama Yana at AfricanDiva_8@hotmail.com if you want to get in on that. It's in Michigan, undisclosed spot, but if you email her or go on this Sisters of Sacred Black on Facebook, you can get information on that retreat, outdoor retreat. It's tents and things like that. So we'll be having a show on that soon, and we'll have shows on the Women in Entheogenic Conference and also the World African Martial Arts Conference. We'll be having, as we get closer to that, we'll be having folks who are going to be presenters at both conferences on the show. As I said, we'll be working weekly. We'll get better with this. We'll be bringing in our co-host, Omalewa, and she'll be coming in with the female point of view and perspective, because I kind of tend to, the warrior aspect and the hard tack line, and she'll come in with more of the sensibility of the divine feminine birth work and bringing children through the dimensional portals into this earth construct, and how we deal with these children who are coming in, who are so evolved. What do we do? What do we do with them? Do we do the same things we did that our parents did to us, send them to school, and you have to drag that stuff out of them 30 years later, or you have to pull it out of yourself 30 years later to start trying to understand who you are and what you are and what your purpose is? Or do we take these children and start dealing with them ourselves and letting them expand into their higher potential and things like that? We have so much work to do, in the midst of the climate in which we are in. The climate has shown, Trump and all that kind of stuff, it's no surprise to me, and it's no surprise to anybody in any sense that most things have not changed. The face of it has changed, but the essence of it has not changed. So what we have to do is evolve. It's not a revolution, it's an evolution. We evolve up out of this nonsense, gain a higher perspective, a higher aspect of view when dealing with the knuckleheaddom that's going on the earth, because we're coming into a rude awakening of who we are, where we are, and these evil entities that are running around here. They may run around here, but they ain't running nothing. But they're creating havoc and chaos. And they will reveal themselves as time goes on. And in the very near future, they will reveal themselves and their masters and how they control of the soul. It ain't about, your money. It ain't about your house. It ain't about the things that you think are most important. It's about controlling the soul, because the soul is the only thing that really exists. The consciousness is about you bowing and bending the knee. Winter is coming. Bend the knee or die. Bend the knee or do not exist. It is about the sovereign consciousness that exists free and clear as a super being in the multiverse. That's what it's about. It's not about, and I'm sorry to say, I know that this life and the earth is in the forefront of how we exist and how we relate to, our lives. But this is only this is a part so small you can't even see it. Once we step out of this three-dimensional, five-sense reality construct that we're stuck on most of the time, once we step out of that and see what's really going on in this thing, and the mushrooms and the DMT and the 5-MeO and the ayahuasca and the ibogaine and the LSD and the salvia divinorum and all of the different entheogens and hallucinogens, but mushrooms in particular will give you a view from the bridge, access to information that will let you know really what this whole thing is about. It's much bigger than what we suspect. You're much more inserted in the fabric of what's going on in the big picture than you think and can imagine. Now, I'm preaching to the choir because the choir is the only one here. It ain't Sunday. The choir is here practicing and singing their songs. So I'm not talking to the masses out there. They're not going to get it. I'm not talking to the people who are not fearless. I'm talking to the fearless ones, those who will take these things and go in. They won't make the excuses. Oh, that's going to fry your brain. When all the studies out have shown that they not only organize your brain to a higher level, this is what the studies are showing, but they're still going to adhere to the same propaganda, the same old nonsense. These are your brains on drugs, the egg frying, reefer madness, where you take a puff of some cannabis and then you ride down the street, think a truck is two motorcycles side by side and run into the truck. The same old nonsense. As I said earlier, folks, this is the only game in town. The only game in town. Everything else is a sidebar. That sidebar is to this, then there's no sense of doing another thing because it ain't pertinent. I don't care how much yoga you're doing. I don't care how much Reiki you're doing. I don't care how much meditation you're doing. I don't care about any of that. All of that should be hooked to your entheogen to be legitimate. And I step on people's toes, and I know they hurt and all that kind of stuff. And you can breathe. You can do Stanislav Grof breathing all you want. It's not going to get you where you got to go. You have to have the booster rocket on your rocket. You can jump. Yes. You can get in an elevator. Yes, you can get in a rocket ship, or you can get in the starship and keep going at superluminal speeds, faster than light. So we're talking about the faster than light travel. So, all of those ancient technologies of which we see the shadow of now. And I use yoga, and I'm not just beating up on yoga, but the ancient yoga and the modern yoga are not the same thing. The pre-flood yoga from the Proto-Vedic times, the times before the Vedas, was a sovereign access through soma into the multiverse so that one can experience the higher powers of what your essence is, the supreme personality of Godhood in the self, not in looking at anything else. something beyond and more powerful than you, because there's nothing beyond and more powerful than you. No God, no energetic being, no super being that is more powerful or more knowledgeable than you. You just don't realize it. And utilizing our real eyes, we can see the higher self, and the higher self is sitting on top of the mountain. And this is a way to start your ascent up the mountain, making your way up the pathways, across the logs and rocks and streams and all those things that you're going to encounter, moving away from the bears to get to the top of that mountain. Or the stifling cold going up to the top of the mountain. And when you go up to the top of the mountain, what do you find? On the top of the mountain, you find yourself. And that's really what all it's about. It's about self-knowledge, self-realization. Self-knowledge and self-realization is the only thing there is. It ain't what somebody else know. It ain't what my teacher know. It ain't what my pastor know. It ain't what my mama know or my daddy know. It's about what you know and understand and can relate to as far as your consciousness is concerned, moving into the next phase of our development. And the next phase of our development is the unimaginable. It is the super being. It is the entity that stands alone in the multiverse, powerful, sovereign. So the great houses that exist inside of the multiverse are accessible by you, and moving into those houses, into your house, into your mansion, as they say, get biblical. In my father's house, there are many mansions, or whatever you want to call it. That's old knowledge, trickle down, drips of knowledge from a flood into knowledge of the modern time. Because we're talking about the house, we're talking about the sovereign. It's just like, I talk to, my Moorish friends and sovereign friends, and they talk to me about nationality and building nationality. Sovereigns don't have nationalities. Sovereigns have houses. And the houses are and stand alone. And houses are beyond nations. Nation construct, that's only part of what is available here on earth in this time construct relationship that we have now. In the multiverse, you're hooked to families, houses. That's why it's so important. That's why the mitochondrial DNA and the Y chromosome. That's why they're so important. That's why we try to not let nonsensical DNA into our families. You don't just be and get with everybody because you have a merging of knuckleheaddom inside of what the informational structure and construct is. So the great houses of the multiverse. You got to find out what house schools do you. You from the Edwards up the street, or you from the Johnsons down the street? Who is you hip to? You kind of look like you one of the Edwards, but no, you one of the Whites. Find out who you are and where you are, who you're hooked to, who your people is. That's what this is all about, finding self-exploration, self-discovery, self-mastery. And the entheogens, worlds within worlds, is how you get there, to see the worlds within worlds. Worlds where all the beings live underwater and are aquatic, like the Nomo that came to the Doga with their fins and flippers. There's a vastness out here. There's so much knowledge and information and stuff to explore and to see. That's why it's about entheogenic explorer, because you become an explorer of the multiverse, an explorer of infinity. Entheogenic explorer, worlds within worlds, worlds that are unimaginably beautiful, that are unimaginably beautiful. So the show went quick. Hit me on Facebook Messenger. We're going to be doing this every week. We're going to get better. We'll be having, next week, we're going to have questions from the audience. We get a microphone so it'll sound better. Thank you very much for coming out. Robert Kilindi signing off. My co-host will be in next week. It's a little bit of learning curve to this blog talk radio thing. As I said, I'll get better. I hope all of you have a prosperous and successful week and weekend. I'm here for you. If you have any questions, hit me on Facebook Messenger. Become my Facebook friend. Kilindi@hotmail.com is my email address. Signing off, and we'll see you all next week with a different topic. We're going to go deeper. Each week we're going to go deeper, and in a few weeks we're going to start bringing in our guests and start interviewing our guests for the different things and bringing information that's off the beaten path for you. So have a good evening. I hope you all have a wonderful evening. Peace to you.